What is up, everybody? What is up? Is Brian here with James again for another fun-filled educational experience and a little bit of news.
Fun-filled, fat-filled night.
Fun-filled, fact-filled. I like that. Fun-filled, fact-filled. Try saying that like 50 times really, really fast.
I'll pass for now.
Well, we mentioned it last night briefly. President Trump was diagnosed with COVID, or the China virus, whatever you want to call it these days. From what I saw today, they're saying he might be released as early as tomorrow. And there was videos of him in an SUV pulling out of the hospital, waving to people today. So I don't know. From what they said, he's had no trouble breathing, like mild fever. He's been up and about, so that's a good thing. But I'm still seeing a lot of people posting shit like, good for him, I hope he dies. And as we said last night, you'd never wish that on anybody under any circumstances, no matter how much you hate them. It's like, I don't know. I don't understand some people. And it's all leftists. Like, people I went to school with are putting this on Facebook. Like, hardcore Democrats. Good for him. I hope he dies. And it's. What?
It's insane that so many people preach that we should all accept each other, but when it comes down to one person, and somehow one person is to blame for the entire division of the United States, when, like you said, mostly leftist, far leftist are saying, yeah, I hope he dies. Okay, you hope he dies, but you want everybody else to love one another unequivocally?
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
unfriended people that I went to school with that I've known for over 20 years for posting shit like that today. It's that bad. And like, I don't know if you watched Saturday Night Live last night. Chris Rock, he started his monologue with like, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the specifics, but it was basically, yeah, President Trump has COVID. Damn, I feel bad for COVID. It's like, dude, this isn't something to joke about.
Hey, at least if you're going to joke about it, have a sense of humor.
Yeah, but if you're gonna
Okay.
force
If
feed
you
it,
if you want to if you
well, if they're gonna
but if
force
you're going
feed it though as this evil, the next coming of the plague, then people shouldn't be joking about it at all. I don't believe that's what it
well
is, and I'm sure most people don't. But it's you
it's
can't have it both ways.
well, and for as deadly as this disease is, I posted a meme on my page today, and it said, in 2018 there was something like 2.8 million deaths throughout the United States. And then in 2019, it was like there was 2.9 million. And then it said 2020, as of right now, it's 2.025 million or something like that. And at the bottom, it was like, okay, so for as deadly as this virus is, we're still on track to have less overall deaths throughout the United States since 2018.
Yeah, figure
So
that out.
figure that out.
Yeah,
This virus is deadly, but like you said, he's getting released from the hospital. They want you to fear it. They want everyone to be like, oh well, Trump's been rallying, blah 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 blah. How many people his staff came down with? Well, how many of his staff members recovered from it? He's recovering from it. I've been tested for it. I don't have it. My wife got tested for it. She doesn't have it. I'm sure it's hard on the elderly. I'm sure it's hard on people with pre-existing conditions.
I think.
Somebody with asthma comes down with it. You get a respiratory problem. Yeah, that's going to seriously affect you. But overall, healthy person, I don't know. I'm not buying into the whole we have to wear a mask thing. I
Yeah,
don't. I
yeah. I
don't.
think. I think H1N1 killed more people than COVID has, and we didn't do any of this crazy lockdowns and masks and social distancing or anything then.
Right. Well, when I was younger, there were Ebola was the big thing. There's always. It seems, especially to me, since 9/11 happened, it seems like they're always cramming some kind of fear down your throat. We started after 9/11. It was the war on terrorism, and then ever since then, we've always had a war on something. There's always been something new to fear after that. And now in 2020, we got COVID and the whole great let's blame Trump for everything. I don't. I just personally, I don't buy it.
Literally everything. He's become the ultimate boogeyman. Like, they blame him for everything. Shit that Obama put into effect, shit Bush put into effect, shit Clinton put into effect, shit that's been into effect for 40 years. Oh, it's Trump's fault. Like, what? But I
Yeah,
just,
that's
real quick, I just gotta mention this. I found this on Twitter today. This guy, everything's literally everything's a conspiracy now. So this guy is the editor in chief of the Air Current, and he put out the pictures that were taken last night of Donald Trump, and he put out these all the information, the details, the timestamps, and he's, I guess, trying to argue that the pictures aren't real or something, or they're staged because they were taken 10 minutes apart according to the timestamps. And this is where, like, the younger generation, the tech-savvy generation, should look at that and say, wait a second, those timestamps, that's when the memory card from the digital camera uploaded those pictures. That's not the time those pictures were taken. I mean, it's not like your cell phone where you snap a picture and that's the timestamp. If you're taking professional pictures for the media, for the President of the United States, you're not doing it with your Android, And it's kind of funny because, like, I took...
no, that's when you get an iPhone 11 and do it.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it.
That's what they did. They did it with an iPhone 11. Sorry, sarcasm. Just utter sarcasm right there. Just ignore that.
No, but seriously, I think the thing is the tweets at 30.8K retweets. So almost 31,000 people read this and are like, "Oh shit, yeah, it's fake. Retweet this. Everyone needs to know." Okay, they need to know that the pictures were uploaded to the internet or uploaded to the computer 10 minutes apart. You don't know what the fuck time these things were taken. That's not what this information shows. It's
Well, okay, I don't have a Twitter account, but does Twitter edit you at all like Facebook does?
only if you're conservative.
Okay, so exactly like Facebook.
Yeah, I had a Twitter account that got banned because all right, have you seen the image of Joe Biden, the article from the 70s or 80s where he was talking about how he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle?
Yeah,
I
76, I believe he said that.
I tweeted that image of that article, tagged Joe Biden, and put hashtag Black Lives Matter. I was banned 5 minutes later.
That's not surprising.
But
So they're a little bit more harsh than Facebook because Facebook will stick you in a 30-day jail or whatever.
yeah,
You
no,
know,
I keep
they don't
keep appealing
all
it.
ban you.
I kept appealing it, and they kept telling me, "No, you're banned." Like, okay, enough. Fuck it. I got a new phone. I got a new number. I'm just gonna make a new Twitter. Fuck these people, Hey,
Right.
Twitter, if you hear me, I'm circumventing your ban evasion because it was a bullshit ban. Come at me, bro. Anyway, Trump seems to be doing good. That's what to take from that. And people are stupid. And this guy's a journalist. He should fucking know that. Editor-in-chief. Come on, dude.
What? Yeah, and if you get news from Twitter and Facebook, and that's your number one source for news, well, there's very little hope for you to be able to think outside the box or be able to do any kind of research. It would be my personal opinion. But hey, if you're listening to this and that's where you get your news, stop getting your news from there. Go do some research.
Well, we
Do
do have
some
a...
independent thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what most people do. They just look at a tweet and be like, okay, well, 20,000 people liked this and 50,000 retweeted it. It must be true. No research.
That's got to be a fact.
That's how all these riots started. Breonna George Floyd, the idiot the Saints praised, the criminal, the rapist, Jacob Blake. Somebody posts like a 9-second image. Look, the police are breaking the law. It's police brutality, and it gets a million fucking retweets, and everyone just runs with it without looking into any of the shit, any of the facts behind it. So real quick, yeah, we're gonna get into the Proud Boys real quick, but breaking right now, they're saying there's outages that are affecting mail-in ballot applications in Pennsylvania, and this is the third notification I've got for this in the past 20 minutes. So that's something to
Really?
be aware of for those of you that are trusting the voting system this year. We've had
Or just people in Pennsylvania in general. If you're out in Pennsylvania, check on your ballots, man.
so that's for voter registration and applying for mail-in ballots. It was earlier this week or last week. They had a bunch of memory cards stolen from the voting machines in Philadelphia. So Pennsylvania, what the hell are you guys doing?
Where was the security on that?
Probably out protesting? I do not know. Apparently our sound is a lot better today. That's good. I spent a lot of time tweaking the audio equalizer. Okay, yeah, the Proud Boys. Well, if you watch ABC, NBC, CNN, pretty much any of them except Fox, you've probably been told the Proud Boys are white supremacists that hate black people and hate Jews, and they're a violent neo-fascist. Right? You know, let's just go right here with what. Let's look at what Wikipedia has to say about the Proud Boys. Because
Yeah, go with. This is something I want to touch on. Go with
yeah,
their first original statement. You remember?
oh, the one, yeah. So, and
Yeah.
but first, I just got to preface: neither of us are part of the Proud Boys. I've in the past, on an occasion, I was able to speak briefly to Joe Biggs, and yeah, he can be a cocky ass at sometimes, but he's not a racist or a white supremacist. That's a bunch of bullshit, and we're about to get into all that. But
I've never looked into him before this whole political
well,
debacle
he's not even the leader.
hit.
Joe Biggs worked with InfoWars for a while, and
Right.
for some reason, whenever they show the Proud Boys, they show Joe Biggs, because I guess that's the public face that people would recognize, so that's who they show you on TV. But
That's the poster boy.
so even though he's just a member, he's probably a higher up member. He might have some control, but he's not the group leader. And what they've been pushing, I know, what are we at now? 130 consecutive days of unrest in Portland, and they never declared an emergency. Then they declared state of emergency last Friday because the Proud Boys were coming to town, and they're going to cause all this violence and destruction. Like, no, that's the left. That's your protesters turned rioters. That's Antifa. That's Black Lives Matter. That is not the Proud Boys. Now, granted, them going there, they know that that's going to probably cause a problem, but they didn't start the problem. We're 130
Well,
days
free
into
free
the problem.
free speech is free speech. And I don't care what group it is. You have the right to free speech, but you don't have the right to riot and loot and like you see the videos of Antifa taking swings at people.
Yeah.
That's not at all part of free speech.
Like, honestly, I think
Going to a march and marching through a town and that's free speech.
I think a lot of people have hit the nail on the head on YouTube. Like, I watch a lot of Tim Pool and a couple other people, and it's pretty much a consensus. The Proud Boys going to Portland is not an instigation of violence. It's a reaction to the bullshit that's been going on for the past 4 months unchecked. This is regular people that have had enough. And, okay, if you were to go to Wikipedia, let's say you saw something on Channel 10 last week talking about, oh, well, Trump and the Proud Boys, the debate, blah, blah, blah. If you look them up on Wikipedia, the Proud Boys are a far-right, neo-fascist, male-only organization affiliated with white supremacists. They promote and engage in political violence. And, like, their ideologies listed here, it's chauvinism, neo-fascism, reenactionarism, ultra-nationalism, white nationalism, far-right. Major actions include aggravated assault, harassment, picketing, political violence, and vandalism. Now, I don't know. I think a lot of that's very inaccurate.
Hey, isn't the left for picketing? I mean, what do unions do? They form a what?
A picket
A
line.
picket line.
Yes, sir.
When 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 is picketing a bad thing? Anyway, sorry, I just picked up on that word. I figured I'd throw that out there.
No, that's true. The one of the ones that I pick up on is political violence, aggravated assault, and vandalism. I don't know about you, but the past 4 months, I see more of that from Antifa and Black Lives Matter and the left than I do from the Proud Boys.
Yeah, definitely more from the left.
I think the majority of the American public never even heard of the Proud Boys before this debate, you know? Most people have no
I
idea who
didn't.
they are. Now,
I didn't have a clue.
okay, now they started a few years back. Gavin McGinnis started the group, and I mean, every group has, you know, your bad apples. The police have their bad apples. I mean, you can look at George Floyd and all the facts that have come out about him. You know, you can almost argue that that wasn't the cause of his death, but still, no matter what, you shouldn't kneel on someone's neck for 8 minutes. So, I mean,
Yeah, everybody's got skeletons in their closet.
well, Gavin McGinnis, a few years back, he said some pretty disparaging things, anti-Semitic things, racist things, and I think that's where people are running with the idea. He was their founder. He said this, so this is what they believe. No, it ain't like that. Let's take a look.
Then take Joe Biden at his word that he didn't want his kids being raised in a racial jungle. Let's be equal about it.
Oh no, it's only well. That's the thing. If the left believes they're always right, there is no equal. It's you're wrong,
All right.
they're right, and if you disagree, you're a racist. That's pretty much
Yeah.
that's 2020 in a nutshell. But just let's take a look at this white supremacist group in a little more detail, shall we? This here is the leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio. Look at this white supremacist. He's an Afro-Cuban from Miami, Florida. And they're calling this a white supremacist group. Enrique Tarrio, American businessman, chairman of the, it even says it on his page, the far-right neo-fascist Proud Boys. Like, really? I mean, you could argue, you can't even really say far-right. Yes, some of them are, but some of them are libertarians. Like, Joe Biggs is libertarian. I mean, it's not even really a far-right group. You have people of varying beliefs, all different races. You have people of different sexual orientations. Like, I watched an interview with the Proud Boys
Actually,
about a
no,
week ago.
you don't have different sexual orientations because I watched one of their videos from their official page, and it's a strictly males.
Yes. No, not different sexes, but orientations. It's strictly male. It's a fraternity, but there are gay members. There are bisexual members. They interviewed one, and he said he feels very safe in this group. They're like his family. I forget the guy's name. I saw it last week, and like you had their Afro-Cuban leader, a gay member, another black member. So it was. Did I lose James? Looks like I lost James. Let me get James back in here. You there?
Yeah,
All right.
technical difficulties.
Yeah.
But no, what I was saying was, according to a video I watched on their own website, it's males only.
Yeah, it's a fraternal order.
Yeah.
But those males, I saw a video. I was just saying there was a video came out last week. They were interviewing like 4 of them. You had this guy Enrique, the leader, the African American Cuban mixed. You had a member who's gay. You had another black guy and I think a white guy, and even the gay guy sitting there like, this is the most comfortable I've ever been with any group of individuals. These are good people, and he's speaking nothing but good things about them. You have the black guy sitting there speaking nothing but good things about them. So this is not some neo-fascist white supremacist group by any means.
Right.
I mean, if they're white supremacist with an Afro-Cuban leader, they're doing something wrong. That's like the worst white supremacists in history, you know?
Yeah, let alone having, I believe they have some Jews in their group,
I think
some Jewish people,
I could see that. I believe. I don't know specifically,
and
but I could see that.
according to other videos I watched, they have groups in all over the world. They have chapters all over the world right now
Yep.
in different countries. And according to what they preached on the video I watched, they were like, well, we do say be chauvinistic. And they're not talking about male chauvinistic. They're talking about being chauvinistic as far as being proud.
Yeah, and that's something to
Be, be,
specify.
be, be,
I'm glad you mentioned that part. There was a CNN interview. It might have been Portland about a month ago, and the woman, the reporter, I forget her name. She's interviewing Enrique Tarrio, and she tried to slip him up, and she said, "So you consider yourselves a male chauvinist group?" He cut her off right there. "No, we are not male chauvinists. We are Western chauvinists." And he went into this long spiel about the difference and put her right in her place. And she kept trying to get him to slip up the way she was phrasing questions. This dude nailed it. This dude nailed that interview. And I'm willing to bet most people didn't get to see that because they probably aired it once and never aired it again.
yeah, or it was just clipped together. They used whatever they could because the media does that too. They'll ask you a ton of questions and you'll slip on one or two of them and they'll show what they want the public to see. That's not when you watch mainstream media. It's not unedited. It's not uncut. And it's not just raw. I mean, most people that watched the debate, they didn't even. Well, okay, I guess this year a ton of people watched the debate live, but in years prior, they wouldn't watch the debate live. They wouldn't stay up for it. They would wake up the next morning and they would see whatever they saw on the 6 o'clock news.
And if you pay attention to social media this year, everything after the debate, can't talk much. The debate was, they're just picking on little things Trump said or did, or he won't disavow white supremacists, even though he clearly did. And people who didn't watch it didn't see any of that. So they just see on social media, it's Facebook, Twitter, Trump won't disavow the white supremacists. He's a racist. Well, he did. So, I mean, it's like a game they play. To the left, it's a game. To everyone else, it's this is real life.
Read the leader's actual political views, because now that Wikipedia sits there and says that he's far right, he's a fascist, he's anti-Semitic, and da 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 da. What are his actual political views?
Let's see.
Because we haven't got to that part of Wikipedia yet.
All right, so this is Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys. Regards to his views on extremist groups and ideologies, Tarrio has been quoted as saying, "I denounce white supremacy, I denounce anti-Semitism, I denounce racism, I denounce fascism, I denounce communism, and any other ism that is prejudiced towards people because of their race, religion, culture, tone of skin." In regards to his own ethnicity, he has said, "I'm pretty brown, I'm Cuban, there's nothing white supremacist about me." And he's a close friend of Roger Stone. According to his campaign's responses to a Ballotpedia survey, I'm not familiar with Ballotpedia, but Tarrio listed criminal justice reform, protection of the Second Amendment, countering domestic terrorism, ending the war on drugs, free speech on digital platforms, and immigration reform among some of his priorities.
So what you're telling me is that if the average Joe Googled this guy, the first thing they're going to read about is how he's anti-Semitic, he's a fascist, he's far right.
And then they scroll down the page and see him denounce all of that. Yes.
Way to go, Wikipedia. That's a fine source of news right there.
Yeah. Well, 2018, Twitter removed his account, amongst others related to the Proud Boys, citing how platform policy prohibited accounts related to violent extremist groups. Now, about that, I can go on Twitter right now and show you a million people that have Antifa in their fucking bios, in their usernames, sitting there posting about how they want to go out and kill cops, kill all white people, kill all straight men. Apparently, that's not against Twitter's terms of service because I've reported
That
those posts a lot and nothing ever gets done.
that's not hate speech.
No, no, that's not. But saying you're part of the Proud Boys is.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, that clears things up.
right? Welcome to 2020. So let's see here. The official Proud Boys website says men's organization founded by Gavin McGinnis. Yeah, we covered him. It's a pro-Western fraternal organization for men who refuse to apologize for creating the modern world, aka Western chauvinists. Their value.
Okay, so they're not going to apologize for building America or coming to America, basically.
That's kind of what I take from that. I
Okay.
don't know. I mean, I'm sure the left would try to spin that in a way to say, they don't apologize for racism or some bullshit, but no, that's
They
not
don't
what it means.
apologize for slavery or what they did to the Indians.
So right under that, it lists their values, and Proud Boys values center on the following tenets: minimal government. I think a lot of people can appreciate that, and that's not a far right idea. Maximum freedom, anti-political correctness, anti-drug war, closed borders, anti-racial guilt, anti-racism, pro-free speech, pro-gun rights, glorifying the entrepreneur, venerating the housewife, and reinstating the spirit of Western chauvinism, which we just said that's not the same as male chauvinism. That's basically they refuse to apologize for creating America.
It, it's almost the same as nationalism, which isn't the same as a white nationalist.
Oh, it even I
Is
didn't
the
even
way
notice at the bottom of their bio here they have "We are not alt-right," just as a standalone sentence.
just point blank. We're not all right.
We are not alt-right
Have
because
you
most of the
clicked on
members are
any?
libertarians. That's, I mean, it's amazing how the mainstream just they're a bunch of far right white supremacists with a black
Have you
Cuban
clicked on
leader.
any of their news articles? Because there was one that I read where they sat down with Whoopi Goldberg.
Um,
She's pretty far
I
left,
haven't read the articles on their site. I've watched a few interviews with them, mostly with the leader,
and
Enrique. And then,
but one thing they agreed on was legalizing marijuana.
hey, I think a lot of people would appreciate that.
That's okay. That's definitely not like the far right would be totally against that.
I think Trump's policy on it was he just didn't care. It wasn't a priority. It's like he's not against
Yeah,
it, but it's not his priority right now. So it's,
but I'm saying if anybody like the Democrats are
oh
the
yeah.
first ones to legalize it. So the last ones to legalize it are
Or
the
are they?
right.
Because remember, Bill Clinton didn't inhale.
Right, right.
I like this little paragraph. Through these are our central tenets. All that's required to become a Proud Boy is that a man declare he is a Western chauvinist who refuses to apologize for creating the modern world. We do not discriminate based upon race or sexual orientation and preference. We are not an ism, ist, or phobic that fits the left's narrative. We truly believe the West is the best and welcome those who believe the same tenets as us. We have international reach with members spanning the globe. If you have any questions, get in contact with your local chapter, contact us directly, etc., so on. But I don't know. This does not look white supremacist to me. This looks quite the opposite.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, like you pointed out, their leader is a black Cuban man. You've watched interviews with you know people of the LGBT community that are members of the Proud Boys, and then you got. I'm sure there's all kinds of different religions in there because I know at one point in time they were talking about they have Jewish members, And then if most of them are libertarian, how can they possibly be
Far right.
right?
Because that's where they count
One
on.
plus one doesn't make four.
That's where they count on
You know,
people to not do research, which ties back
right?
into last night's episode on the Fourth Amendment. If you're gonna, base your entire argument on one subject, do your research on it.
Right.
Because the people that are claiming, I see people at Facebook. I have a lot of people I graduated with, and it's like 50-50. Half of them are like, yeah, this is a bunch of bullshit. The COVID narrative, the Trump's a racist narrative, the Proud Boys shit. And then you have other ones that just reshare every talking point from the left. Trump's a racist. Breonna was asleep in her bed and she was shot. The Proud Boys are white supremacists who want to exterminate the Jews and enslave the black people. It's like, where are you getting this information? And it's almost always, I saw it on Twitter or I saw it on the news. Well, did you confirm it?
Don't you know? If you don't know, I can't explain it to you.
Did you do anything to confirm what you saw? Did you just run with it?
I've had people argue that point to me. Well, if you don't know, I'm not going to explain it to you.
Oh yeah, that's another good one. And if you
Well,
try,
that makes a lot of sense to me.
well, it's also like if you prove them wrong with actual verifiable facts, they just say, "Oh, you're one of those Trump racists." It's like I'm not even
Yeah.
like people don't realize I get a lot of flack for this, and I'm gonna go off topic here for a second. Um, when I was younger, most of my beliefs and ideals growing up would have leaned more left. I was for gun rights, but because of the idea that I felt the only way to have a world with no guns and complete peace, you have to destroy every gun in the world simultaneously. And that's not physically possible. So as long as there's criminals with guns, people need guns. But overall, I was more Democrat because, like, I went to school in the 90s, and the first major thing I experienced would have been 9/11, and I was against the war Bush started after that, and I didn't trust Bush, and I think that administration was heavily involved in 9/11. That could be a series of episodes in and of itself, but I was in a punk rock band. I listened to a lot of punk music, and most of those bands are very leftist ideals. And now I'm going back looking at bands I listened to like Anti-Flag and The Unseen and The Exploited and Bad Religion and NoFX, and it's like I don't really agree with all of this anymore. Like it's almost like, I hate to say it, it's like I got older and realized no, like you're wrong. And some of these people haven't, and they're the ones that'll sit there and say, if you don't agree with us, you're a racist or you're an enemy of our people. And like, I'm almost afraid to go see any of these bands in concert now, because if I slip up and say something wrong, I might get jumped by the entire fucking crowd, because that's how they think. It's like Anti-Flag is a very political band. They performed acoustic outside for Occupy Wall Street, like, but they're very left. And
I've heard them.
yeah, I like a lot of their stuff, but a lot of it you can interpret from a neutral point of view, like neutral party point of view.
Yeah, but
But
if you're talking about anti-flag and like fuck your government and that kind of thing, I'm sorry, that kind of fits in with the Proud Boys, because they're like, less government. I'm for less government. I don't want.
but it's like now
Yeah,
as
universal health care would be nice.
oh yeah,
But with that being said, that means that the government's going to have their hand in my pocket, and when they have their hand in my pocket, they try to tell me what to do.
and beyond that,
And I don't like that idea.
and I don't like how a lot of these bands push the left agenda on you. They push Black Lives Matter. They push Antifa. And if you,
Oh, great schools are doing it now too.
I will say, a couple different occasions, I met Chris Number Two. He's the bassist for Anti-Flag, and we would talk music, things like that. Like when I met him in person, I never talked politics with him, because at the time I agreed with like I was young. I was like teens, 20s, I agreed with everything he was saying. I didn't know any better. I recently, now we're in the new age of social media. About a year ago, I was following Chris Number 2 on Twitter, and the stuff he was saying, I'm just like, dude, you realize that's not physically possible. That doesn't make sense, because if you do that, then this. And I got to a point where it's like we almost got in a banter back and forth about it, and he just got so angry. And I'm like, this isn't for me anymore. I love your music and all, but this isn't for me anymore. Good luck, dude. And I fucking unfollowed him. But
Yeah, I had my sister block me over disagreements. Like I said, I'm a constitutionalist. I've pissed off people that are right wing. I've pissed off people that are left wing. I kind of like where I sit on it as far as my views go, because if I'm pissing everybody off, I got to be doing something right. You
true.
can't win them all.
I always try to I don't try to affiliate with any one side. I look at what is this person saying that I agree with, or versus what I disagree with. What makes the
Right.
most sense with the knowledge I have and the things I've learned over the years? Who makes the most sense? Right now, it's the right. So
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I mean, that doesn't make me like a diehard Trumper or a right winger. That makes me someone who sees, hey, this side's fucking doing shit right. This other side, they're trying to start a civil war.
Yeah, there's always something right now, especially in 2020. There's always been something with the left. Well, this needs to change, and that needs to change, and this needs to change, and that needs to change. It just kind of reminds me of those kids you see in the grocery store that are just throwing a temper tantrum, and the mom's sitting there looking at them like, "You need to calm down." I learned a long time ago. I actually had this debate in high school, and the debate I had, it boiled down to one thing: the people that cry the loudest get their way. That's what I
That
that's
makes
what I
sense.
saw in life at the age of like 16. I seen all these. They were I was going to preppy school then, and they were preppy kids. I watched one girl drive her car, or her dad bought her a brand new Hummer when they first came out. She didn't want it. She wanted a Jaguar. She purposely totaled the Hummer because she didn't get a Jaguar. And then she cried because her daddy took away her license for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, she shows up in a brand new Jag. What did she learn? She learned that if she cried about it hard enough, she got her way.
That's one thing
And now,
I keep telling
now
people when they look at what's going on right now. I keep telling them, think back about 15, 20 years when they started all that don't spank your kids, don't discipline your kids, participation trophies, safe spaces, all that bullshit came into play. These are those kids grown up now that are out there destroying cities like Portland and Seattle because
they're
exactly
triggered.
what you just said. If I cry more and I throw a bigger tantrum, I'll get what I want. And I have a safe space now. You can't talk bad about me, because then I can say you're a racist.
Yeah, there's always an out.
They've never understood
It's always
consequence. They never got spanked. And
it's
my dad beat
always
my ass
somebody
if I
else's fault.
deserved it. Yeah, it's
It's
always.
always somebody else's fault.
Always.
There's no accountability.
And I think that makes me think, like, okay, you don't want us to discipline our kids and teach them right from wrong, and then they grow up and do stupid shit. Like go out and barricade police inside of a federal building and try to set it on fire and expect no repercussions. And as soon as they get arrested for it, they cry police brutality. No, sorry, it doesn't fucking work that way.
Speaking of police brutality,
Speaking of, moving on. I need to step away for 30 seconds, but go ahead and step in and just tell the people, what you know about the Breonna Taylor case, and then we're going to get into a little deep dive here of things that have come out in the grand jury, stuff that's come out in the past month that we didn't know 6 months ago, things like that. But go ahead and say your piece, and I will be right back in a matter of moments.
All right. Well, my basic understanding of it is the same thing everybody else has seen in the news. You got cops that did a no-knock warrant. She was sleeping in her bed, and her boyfriend at the time um, decided to fire at police, uh, which ultimately ended the situation very badly. With that being said, when we decided to look into this, one of the first things I decided to look into was, does Kentucky, I believe it happened in Kentucky, does Kentucky have a stand your ground law or a castle law, or are they like a run and hide? So here's what I got when I looked up Kentucky's law on uh, whether they had a stand your ground or a castle doctrine. If I can find my screenshots here. Well, let me just pull it up on the internet real quick
Yep, I'm here, by the way.
because I found something really interesting and I don't want to misquote it.
Yeah, I'll let you pull that up before I get into all this, because this is going to completely shatter the mainstream narrative.
Well, and the reason why I looked this up is because, okay, let's go with, I've seen a lot of memes from the left saying, where are all the conservatives with the, if somebody breaks in my house, I'm going to shoot them. And then it has some other thing about, well, basically the conservatives just standing by and giving excuses as to why this girl actually got shot. But here's the law from Kentucky. Okay, basic question is, do they have a stand your ground law? Yes, Kentucky is a castle doctrine state and has a stand your ground law. A person who is not engaged in unlawful activities and who is attacked in any other place where he or she has the right has a right to be has no duty to retreat. So they have no matter where you're at in Kentucky, you have no reason to run for your life. He or she has the right to stand his or her ground and meet force with force, including deadly force, if he or she reasonably believes it's necessary to do so to prevent death or great bodily harm to himself, herself, or another. Force may also be used to prevent the commission of a felony involving the use of force. Any person who uses a gun in self-defense has immunity from criminal and civil law. Now, one could, and this is the big argument from the left, well, they have a castle doctrine. Well, yes, but read that a little bit more carefully. It says if you're not participating in unlawful activity. So
That's the key.
basically, if you're,
Right there, that's the
if
key. Because
that's the key, if
what
you're
I'm
sitting
going
there,
to
if you're
present in a few minutes, that statement right there, keep that in mind.
so just for shits and giggles, I looked up Wisconsin's law. Wisconsin has a castle doctrine. And the difference between a ground doctrine and a castle doctrine is the castle doctrine only applies to where you're at. So in Wisconsin, if somebody breaks into my house, I can blow them right out the front door. But I have to be in my house when it happens.
Yeah.
If somebody breaks into my car, I can blow them right out the door. But I have to be in my car when it happens. Same with a business. You have to be in the business. Now, according to Kentucky law, you don't have to necessarily be there. So if you had a Ring doorbell and you saw somebody breaking into your house, much like the woman in Florida did, there was a big deal about that woman who raced home, beat the cops there, and shot the guy coming out of her house. That's a stand your ground law. That would not fly in Wisconsin because I would have had to been inside the house while he was in the house. So again, this is where people need to do their research and know their state laws.
That yeah.
because just because you have a concealed carry permit doesn't mean you can do what you think you can do. But that's what that's just basics of what I know. And the first thing I wanted to look up was the Castle Doctrine, because that's the argument I'm hearing from the left more often than not is, well, conservatives say if somebody breaks into their house, okay, I can understand. Okay, let's say the cops got the wrong house. Okay, let's just imagine for a second that they were at the completely wrong house.
Which,
I do not blame
which actually in the beginning, when this happened, that's what the mainstream pushed, was they were serving a no-knock warrant and went to the wrong address. It was not the wrong address. That was the address on the warrant. We'll get to that in a second. Continue.
But if that was the case, I would stand behind the guy that fired the gun. Because you're getting, I don't know what time of night it happened, but let's just say you're laying in bed and then all of a sudden there's 5 guys in ski masks in your house. You're not going to have time to process who they are. So at that point, as a constitutionalist, I would stand with this particular case, is my point. You know what I mean? I'm not, at 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody busts down my door, I'm not going to ask a whole lot of questions.
Now, I can agree with that. I can agree with that based on the original story that was put out by the media, that it was a no-knock warrant, that they did not knock, they went to the wrong address, she was in bed sleeping. Yeah, if that was what really happened, then yeah,
it would be
then
100%
you have
the police's fault.
You have 100%. Yes, you have the right to start shooting. However, and that's what people argued.
No,
That was what people
case,
argued, and
they did. And in case the police should be held 110% accountable.
but what's come out since then, particularly since all the rioting, and the grand jury, they did their, I don't even know the word right now. I'm drawing a blank.
Well, you've done more research on it than I have, so go ahead with that. I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, so you got this point, and I can understand that point.
Yeah, and I agree with that. If that was how it went down, then yes, by all means, start shooting. You don't know who it is. It's the middle of the night. Start shooting. And that's the narrative that was originally pushed. But since then, the information's come out of what really went down that night. Yes, that was the house on the warrant. Yes, she was on some level involved in criminal activity. Yes, the cops did knock and announce that they were the police, and the boyfriend who fired the shots at the police even admitted in his testimony that the cops knocked. So this is where it gets interesting, because the mainstream, they're not reporting this. They just let it go. They told their original story and never redacted it. And a lot of this information's come out within the past, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks. But I found this article in the New York Times today that it gives from October 2nd, it gives a pretty good summary. Breonna Taylor, medical worker, shot and killed by Louisville police in March. I thought it was April, but I guess it was March. The grand jury indicted a former Louisville police officer in late September for wanton endangerment because the shots he fired were blind and could have gone through a wall, killed a neighbor, and the other 2 officers were not charged, the ones who actually shot Breonna Taylor. And people have been really upset about that, and that's what the protests and rioting have been over.
Oh, yeah, because they're charging them for the bullets that didn't hit her.
Yeah. But what they don't realize is more information's come out about what went down that night and the case surrounding it, and the mainstream never bothered to go back and tell them. They're just letting it go. So you have Officer Hankison. He's the one that got charged with wanton endangerment. He was actually terminated by the Louisville police. They said he showed an extreme indifference to the value of human life. And I have a feeling a lot of that was due to public backlash, mob mentality, appease the mob. We have to do something, so let's do this. Obviously, It didn't work because they're still out destroying cities. And assaulting people, but that's another story in and of itself. He says, Sergeant John Mattingly of Louisville says, I know we did the legal, moral, and ethical thing that night. And I kind of have to agree with him, and we're going to get into that. But I'm just skimming through
Well,
this real quick because this is the New York Times. This is, one of the biggest newspapers in the country, and this is what they're putting in this article as of October 2nd, just 2 days ago.
and I just want to remind our listeners, keep in the back of your mind that this was a no-knock warrant, and the police still knocked.
That says a lot. They did knock,
That
and both sides admit the police did knock. Yes, it was a no-knock warrant, but they did not serve it as a no-knock warrant. They knocked. And if the police side says that they announced this is the police, they have a witness, says they heard them say, we are the police, open up, we have a warrant. Um, the boyfriend whose name I forget, but I'm going to remember it in a few seconds when I get to it, he says they knocked, but he didn't hear them say police. So that part, that's argumentative. You could take that either way, but they did knock. Both sides agree on that.
both sides agree there was a knock on the door.
So, and Taylor's
Burglars don't
family,
generally knock.
Taylor's family was paid $12 million in a settlement to end a wrong death lawsuit. So that's might or might not be something to take into account. But here we go. What really happened? Shortly after midnight, March 13th, the Louisville police officers executing a search warrant used a battering ram to enter the apartment of Miss Taylor, 26-year-old emergency room technician. And about that, I've heard varying stories about that she had not been an EMT for several years. That's something I've been trying to confirm, but I can't. I see basically equal evidence on both sides. Yes, she was still an active EMT. No, she was not. So we're just going to overlook that part, and we're just going to say it's a girl in her apartment. The police have
Right,
been...
doesn't matter what she did for a living.
Yeah, we're just going to negate that part because I can't confirm or deny, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest she hasn't been an EMT for several years. But the police had been investigating two men they believed who were selling drugs out of a house that was far from Miss Taylor's house. Judge also signed a warrant allowing police to search Miss Taylor's residence because police said they believed that one of the men had used her apartment to receive packages. Now, I saw, I believe it was Nate the Lawyer did a video where he mentioned the terms trap house and stash house. The trap house is where you will go to get your drugs, do your drugs, etc. The stash house is where they store that shit so that if the trap house gets raided, they don't lose their entire supply and all their drug money income. So that's something
Right.
to keep in mind too, is are they looking at a trap house or a stash house? Because when you're dealing with narcotics police, the whole idea is to move up the chain. All right, we caught this guy selling dope on the corner. Well, let's make a deal with him, figure out where he got it. Okay, so now we're looking at this guy. All right, we're pretty confident that this is the right guy. Let's make a deal with him and figure out where he's getting it. That's how it works. That's how...
Right. Yeah, and logic to me would say that they're looking at this house as a stash house because if you're receiving packages
Exactly.
that contain drugs, you're stashing it for somebody.
And the man that...
There's obviously no drug traffic coming to the house, but they believe the guy had drugs in the house.
Correct. And the guy they're referring to was Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend. So according to the family, they had severed ties, but that's going to be proven wrong shortly. So Miss Taylor and her boyfriend Kenneth Walker had been in bed, got up when they heard a loud banging at the door. Mr. Walker said he and Miss Taylor both called out asking who was at the door. Mr. Walker later told the police he feared it was Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend trying to break in. Now, according to the cops, they said it's the police, we have a warrant. So I'm kind of willing to believe that, because if you're going to knock, you're going to announce who you are. You're not going to walk blindly into a house in the middle of the night. And both sides admit they did knock. So after the police broke the door off its hinges, Walker fired his gun once, striking Sergeant Mattingly in the thigh. The police responded, firing several shots, striking Miss Taylor several times. It says 5. I believe it was actually 8. One of the 3 officers on the scene, Detective Brett Hankison, who has since been fired, shot 10 rounds blindly into the apartment. He's the one that was charged with wanton endangerment because they argued that those bullets could go through a wall and kill a neighbor. Now, in this case, if they're looking at this as a stash house that they've been scoping out, they announced their presence. Okay, maybe Walker didn't hear them say it's the police. That's possible. Maybe they said it and he didn't hear them. Either way, they knocked. He fired a shot, hit a police officer. Well, they're allowed to return fire. You're shooting at them. And people were arguing at the beginning, and even the news was reporting she was asleep in bed. She got shot and died in the hallway leading to the front door.
Right, I was going to say, didn't you just say when you first read what happened, they both got up to answer the door?
Yes.
I was just going to point that out.
Yep. But that's a big...
Because if you listen to everybody on Facebook and everybody on Twitter, and you follow the memes and you listen to the stupid shit, she was in her bed asleep, and that was going to be my next argument: is how are you going to sleep through a gunfight?
Oh, how are you going to die in the hallway if you were asleep in bed?
She was sleepwalking.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Sleepwalked right in between a gunfight.
Yeah,
but
that must have been how that happened, according to the mainstream media. I don't know. Here we go again, though. But here's mainstream media.
Now, what I've learned, this Officer Hankerson, he did a lot of shady shit after the fact. I don't know if this article covers it. Keep going, and we're going to find out. But if not, I'm going to have to pull from memory on that one. But they had an ambulance on the scene. It was told to leave an hour before the raid, which is counter to standard practice. Which, I mean, I can kind of see the point of that. If you have an ambulance, first responders, and you think you're going into a stash house where you might potentially encounter violent resistance, you don't want, the EMTs to get caught in the crossfire. That makes sense. So
no, they should have had them waiting around the block or something.
That would have made more sense, yeah. But they called an ambulance back to the scene, struggled to render aid to their colleague, Miss Taylor. This says Miss Taylor was not given any medical attention, and that is false. Because every other report that's come out in the past month states that she was immediately given medical attention once the scene was defused.
Okay, now see, there's a key word. Once it was defused. That's pretty vague.
Which means when the shooting stopped. If you have an active gunfight, you're not going to send someone in between two shooters in opposite directions to try to render aid to someone. You wait until, even military, they're going to...
Yeah, but if they only had one ambulance on scene...
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's...
Because in my mind, the way this went down is, okay, they busted open the door, there was a gunfight, the cop got shot coming in, which means he's kind of in the way of the door, so his buddies are going to drag him out. There's an ambulance on scene, they're going to take care of the first wounded out the door.
All right, so 12:47 a.m. This is 5 minutes after the shooting. At this point, Walker, the boyfriend, still, I guess, doesn't realize this is the police that are entering his house. But he called 911. I don't know what's happening. Someone kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend. So they're saying Breonna Taylor received for more than 20 minutes after she was struck. That sounds... Yeah, because this guy barricaded in the house after he shot the cop and they shot back. That's why she didn't receive medical attention, because she was in the hallway, in the crossfire. No, they're not going to put themselves at risk to,
Yeah, they're not going to put EMT at risk for that. So that
when they know there's someone armed in the house that shot them, it's...
Right.
They're not going to risk that. It wouldn't make sense. Like, that would be illogical. Because for all you know, you send someone in there to invest... Okay, let's figure out is anybody hurt? Let's go check on this person. You get shot in the fucking head.
Just look at the riots in and of themselves. They can't even send fire department or EMT for the riots because they're afraid for the same exact reason. Them get hurt.
And it makes sense. I don't disagree with it.
No,
it sucks, but you have to...
Those are the facts.
But, I mean, if you have life being taken, you don't want more lives at risk.
Yeah, I think that's logical.
Now the coroner says she probably died less than a minute after she was shot. So whether they had gone right in or waited the 20 minutes to make sure that they could get in safely is irrelevant. She was already dead. And
Yeah.
not trying to be cold saying it that way, but
Those are the facts.
if you see your boyfriend shooting there was a witness came forward. It was in the grand jury. A witness said they heard one of the neighbors. The police knocked. They announced it's the police. We have a warrant. Blah blah blah. And then Walker shot at a cop. So she should not have walked in between that gunfight.
She shouldn't have even been there for it.
No, she
I'm
should have stayed in the bedroom.
I'm sorry, but
she should have stayed in the bedroom.
Yeah. I've had weird things happen at my house where I've heard bumps in the night or whatever, and guess what? My wife doesn't get up with me out of bed to go check on the house.
And
That's not.
Yeah,
That's not really common
no, that's not something that you would normally see happen.
in my book.
Like, I don't think a rational person that would normally happen that way.
No.
Well, this goes on to say, while the department received court approval for a no-knock entry, the orders were changed before the raid to a knock and announce, which sources say
They did.
that's what they did. They knocked, they announced. He didn't hear them announce, but there's a witness they announced. Okay, Jamarcus Glover was the ex-boyfriend whose alleged packages led the police to her door that night. He was arrested August 27th for possession of drugs. And he told the Courier-Journal Miss Taylor had no involvement in the drug trade. Well, of course, because nobody wants to be a rat. Whether she was involved or not, that's what he's going to say, unless he's trying to make a deal. The police are trying to make it out to be my fault and turning the whole community out here, making it look like I brought this to Breonna's door. Well, sorry, based on everything I've seen, you did. I hate to say it that way, but then it gets into it.
Well,
there's a section of the article under that. It gets into
even if he didn't, then the ex-boyfriend did, because the ex-boyfriend was having packages delivered to her house.
exactly.
They don't. I mean, cops just don't make that up. They're not going to sit there and be like, well.
Well, it turns out they were watching this house. They were watching that house and him for several months. Saw him in a red car that was going to that house. They scoped it out. They did a full investigation. This wasn't like some random, hey, let's, that house. I think there's drugs in that house. Let's get a warrant. No, they...
That's what I'm saying. The cops don't operate like that. It's not...
It gets into why did the police fire their weapons?
That's exactly what I was saying. That's not how they do things.
The Louisville police say they fired inside Miss Taylor's home
only
after they were first fired upon by Mr. Walker. That's confirmed. They said Mr. Walker wounded one of the officers. That's confirmed. Walker was charged with attempted murder of a police officer, but the charge was dismissed in May. And this is May. That would have been before
the fact that they served a warrant and knock is confirmed by 3 different people. It's confirmed that the police knocked. It's confirmed by 2 people that they announced themselves.
And that's the very next sentence. The police assert they knocked several times, identified themselves as police officers with a warrant before entering the apartment. Mr. Walker said he and Miss Taylor heard aggressive banging at the door, asked who it was, but did not hear that it was the police.
But the neighbor heard the
knocking
and say it was the police. So there's people saying that they're knocking. Yeah, the neighbor heard them. So you got the neighbors, the police, and the individual himself confirming that they knocked.
Correct.
You know what you don't have yet? You don't have her laying in her bed asleep being an innocent victim.
And you won't.
That's what you don't have, and that's what the mainstream media has pushed.
Well, it goes on.
And you won't hear it out of...
No, and even no matter what comes out, they're not reporting
her as a political pawn.
Exactly. They're not reporting any of the stuff that's come out in the grand jury. They're not reporting any of it.
They're using her as a political pawn at this point, which is sad. When you have a political party that's willing to use the death of somebody as a political agenda, that as an American you should be ashamed of that.
Well, according to Mr. Walker's lawyer,
this
is a direct quote. He goes, he didn't know these were police officers and they found no drugs in the apartment. He was scared for his life and for her life. Okay, well, if you didn't hear them announce themselves, that doesn't mean they didn't. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend. That was what he said to 911.
Yeah, and they believed his and like I read at the beginning of this, the Kentucky law. It says if you're not, if I would have to look up, I'd have to pull it back up on my phone, but it states unlawful activity.
Yeah.
And at the point where they have a warrant on your house, you're fully suspected of unlawful activity. If you weren't, there wouldn't be a warrant at your door.
And if they're looking at you as a stash house, then I think most police,
That,
if they're going to raid a stash house in the middle of the night, it's reasonable to assume that there might be people in there with weapons that are going to defend their stash. Now, granted, they didn't find anything in the
yes,
house, but they went off the warrant with the assumption that there were drugs in the house based on their investigation. So they had every reason to believe they were walking into a hot situation.
so I had this guy heard them say police, and everybody would have got down on the floor and stuck in handcuffs while they searched the house. Guess what? They would probably have a lawsuit against the city for the city destroying their house, and go on, and both of them would be alive. But instead, the girlfriend gets shot. They settle her wrongful death
With taxpayer
for
money,
$12 million. Is that what you said?
$12 million of taxpayers' money.
$12 million of taxpayer money. And then they're gonna, okay, so it costs $12 million to use somebody as a political pawn. That's what you buy that life for. You bought it for $12 million, and now you're gonna use it to push your agenda. And you bought it with taxpayers' money.
And this is where
That's how I see this went down.
okay, now this is where the New York Times article starts to kind of float a little to the mainstream narrative when it gets into the police errors in the incident report. Listed Breonna Taylor's injuries as none, even though she'd been shot several times. It said that officers had not forced their way into the apartment, even though they used a battering ram to break the door down. So they lied a lot on the incident report, and that can hurt them in the long run. I really feel in this situation they didn't have to. They could have been completely honest with what happened, and everything, the cops would have been in the clear. But they said it's outrageous that the police felt it necessary to conduct the raid in the middle of the night, according to Miss Taylor's family. And no, that's when you do this, when people are asleep, when they're not thinking straight, when they're not on high alert. If you're going to raid what you think is a stash house where people might have weapons, you don't want to do it in the middle of the day when everyone's wide awake on high alert with their gun in their hand. That creates more risk of casualty. That's what you want to avoid. So yes, you're going to do that in the early morning or the middle of the night.
Yeah, most raids take place early in the morning, from what I've seen.
And then
Like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
it says there was no
Because
body
people are
camera footage from the raid.
Freaking out. You have to sleep sometime.
There's no body camera footage from the raid. That's partially accurate. It's come out that there was camera footage, but not of the actual raid itself. There was footage outside after the raid took place. So that's kind of a gray area there.
Okay, well, no body cam footage means no body cam footage. It doesn't mean no footage.
True. But there, some legal experts are suggesting that prosecutors dropped the charges after on Walker, the attempted murder of a police officer charge, after a grand jury indictment suggested they may have doubts about the version of events told by the police. Which, yes, there is some doubt with the version of events, because from what I've heard, I don't have it pulled up right now, and that's my bad, but
Not only
that
that,
Hankison, Detective Hankison, the one that fired blindly into the house, he immediately after, he tried to walk into the apartment And that's a no-no. You have to wait for internal affairs to get there if you fired shots and you killed someone, because they don't want you going in tampering with evidence to make yourself look better. He tried to walk inside the apartment. Then he showed up at the
Right.
hospital like an hour later talking to Sergeant Mattingly in private. So what are they talking about? Are they trying to corroborate a bullshit story? So I think this Hankerson, he thought, oh shit, I fucked up. I shot the wrong person. I'm in hot water now. I got to cover my ass. But that still doesn't change what happened leading up to that. That they had a warrant, they knocked, they announced, they were shot at, they returned fire.
Well, and another reason why they could have dropped the charges of attempted murder or whatever against the boyfriend is because, his lawyer might have backpedaled and been like, look, if you look at the stand your ground law, he knew he was doing nothing unlawful. So there might be a legal argument there, seeing how they didn't find any drugs in the house, they couldn't prove any illegal activity. Was he actually within his right to shoot at a police officer? It's police. I'm just throwing it out there. That could be. There's a small possibility that could be a legal
Well,
argument.
if he didn't hear that they announced themselves as police, if he just heard the banging on the door, then he could actually. But then again, then you're taking. That's basically taking him at his word, because what's he gonna say? Yeah, I heard them say police, and then I shot them. I mean, no one's gonna admit to that.
Yeah, that's what you call plausible deniability. It's possible. That's what I would put that under. I would call that a plausible deniability defense.
Well, as a result of that instance, on June 11th, the city of Louisville banned the use of no-knock warrants, even though it wasn't served as a no-knock warrant. Find that kind of interesting.
Well, I can understand why they did that, because when the story first came out, that's how it was perceived, as a no-knock warrant.
But you would think the
officials, according to what you read, originally it was a no-knock warrant, and at the last minute they said no, you have to knock.
But you would kind of think that even if you're not going to release this to the public, you would at least release it to the mayor that, hey, no, this got changed, because this is going to put a lot of police officers at risk now. Because, I mean, there are some circumstances where no-knock warrants are the best possible course of action to avoid widespread casualty.
I personally don't like no-knock warrants for this very reason.
I'm not a fan of them, but I understand that there are circumstances where that's better.
But
in this case, though, they knocked and announced who they were and that they had a warrant.
Yeah, if you get rid of no-knock warrants altogether, well, you still kind of got the element of surprise, not as much. Because you've got to figure the SWAT teams, they set up blocks away. They know when they know when it's go time.
Yeah. Oh, I follow a lot of police officers, former police officers, and they all pretty much present it the same way with a no knock. The idea is, if you knock, hey, we're the police, we have a warrant, that gives people inside time to get guns and shoot at you, time to flush evidence down the toilet, things like that. So I understand why they do it. It's
right.
It's kind of it's one of those things where it's like both sides have a valid argument.
It's a slippery slope either way you look at it.
Well, they said
I'm not a fan of them, but like you said, it's a slippery slope, because then you give criminals time to hide, get rid of, or prep for a gun battle in one instance, and in the other instance, this is a perfect example. You have a no-knock warrant. The guy didn't hear. Let's just take the guy at the word and say that he didn't hear him, and he didn't recognize him as police until after he shot the first one, and then his girlfriend was laying dead on the floor. Then he went and hid.
And called 911.
Okay.
And he called 911.
And called 911.
That's a big thing for him. That's like his main defense right there, is what he said on that 911 call. Is he sounded panicked, someone broke into my house and shot my girlfriend.
So that validates that he didn't hear police. That kind of validates his story on that one.
I honestly think if he hadn't put in that 911 call, he'd easily have been charged attempted murder of a police officer.
And he probably would have been charged with the death of his girlfriend. Because, it's like those laws that they have when you commit a robbery. If somebody dies during the robbery, whether the store clerk pulls out a 45 and blasts away your guy that's watching the door, or if the store clerk dies and you're just the lookout and you're the only one that gets caught, you still get charged for that murder. Because that murder wouldn't have taken place if you wouldn't have done what you did.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So this is my favorite section of this.
So had he not run and hid and did the 911 call, so what's the likelihood he could be charged with his girlfriend's murder by the cops?
Well, here's where this article...
It wouldn't be the first time.
Here's where this article starts to go back to being like a more neutral perspective and less of the left narrative. It says on 2 days ago, October 2nd, 15 hours of grand jury inquiry were released. The audio files begun to shed light on the evidence jurors considered when choosing to indict Mr. Hankison and declining to bring charges against the other officers, which is what people were rioting over. Now this says, this is the New York Times. Grand jurors heard at least 2 police officers at the raid on Miss Taylor's apartment say the group knocked and announced their presence several times before breaking down the door. Those accounts have been questioned by several of Miss Taylor's neighbors and her boyfriend. Detective Cosgrove said officers knocked for 90 seconds, that the volume escalated from gentle knocking to forceful pounding to pounding while yelling police, which if you can watch a movie and see what it looks like when police knock on your door and yell police. That's how they really do it. For 1 to 2 minutes, Detective Michael Noble said he knocked and announced himself as the police before using a battering ram to force his way into an apartment. And that's normal operating procedure. Grand jurors were played recordings of radio calls from Mr. Hankison, as well as 911 calls made after the shooting began. The calls suggest Mr. Hankison believed Sergeant Mattingly had been wounded by someone with an AR who was barricaded inside the apartment. Mr. Hankison's reference to an AR on the call appears to be a reference either to an assault rifle or the AR-15, a type of military-style semi-automatic rifle. Grand jurors also raised several questions, including if Mr. Walker had been named in the search warrant, which he had not. What exactly the officers saw when the apartment door opened, whether the officers executing the warrant were aware that the police had already found Mr. Glover. At times, the jurors' questions suggested they were skeptical of the photos and videos they were being shown. The release of the recordings came after one of the grand jurors filed a court motion that asked for the proceedings to be made public. The juror also accused Kentucky's Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, of using the jurors as a shield to deflect accountability and responsibility. Mr. Cameron insisted the jurors were given all of the evidence. So that's kind of interesting. But this is where it gets really, really interesting. And all credit for this goes to Brandon Tatum. He's a former police officer turned, I guess you could call him YouTuber / news guy. I really don't know what you would refer to him as for a career at this point, but TatumReport.com. And he usually is very good about things involving law enforcement. He, being former law enforcement, he gets the deep stuff. He gets the stuff that the general public has a hard time getting their hands on. And he did a very comprehensive 42-page report about the Breonna Taylor raid. And I'm not going to read through 42 pages of this. A lot of it covers stuff we just mentioned. But it has, her address, April 2016 to the present. Has a lot of information regarding the warrants that were executed. If anybody wants to see that, it's on TatumReport.com. But what really gets interesting is the phone call.
You should throw that link in the comments.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna drop the link in.
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw this in the comments and in the chat real fast before I get back to it. But what this, I read this entire thing, and it's a lot of information. It's a lot to take in. But basically, there it has phone call transcripts of when Breonna Taylor was getting phone calls from jail from her ex-boyfriend and talking about, he's using key words that basically, I mean, if you're from the streets, or even if you're in law enforcement, you know a lot of these key words. He's making it really seem like her apartment is part of a drug ring. And he's talking about posting bail for so and so, this and that, called her to, get bail money, things like that. It goes into the warrant. It goes into Glover. I mean, if you're from, they were following, who's basically the reason they got the warrant for that address. It talks about how he they basically he had this car that he was going to make drug deals, and they witnessed, the officers investigating witnessed this car at Breonna Taylor's address, and he would go in and out, and things like that. It basically lists everything you need to get a warrant to raid a stash house, and presents it as a stash house. That is pretty much the crux of it. And so it's understandable why the cops reacted the way they did. Has the map of her apartment, the address. There's things in here from January. Like, they were investigating this case for several months before they executed this raid. And it goes into great detail. Like, for example, February 13th, 2020, approximately 14:27 hours, PBI detectives observed through the poll camera Jamarcus Glover operating this Dodge Charger, pulled up at this address, went to this address, followed it here, etc., so on. And it's months of this stuff. Phone call transcripts, investigation reports. So they had every reason to believe when they walked up to that apartment that was on the warrant that it was part of a drug ring and they might meet resistance. So it's understandable that they shot. And right now, for the viewers,
after being shot at,
I'm just flipping through these pages. I'm not even stopping to read all this. You guys can read it. The link's in the comments. It's in the chat. TatumReport.com. Just look for the Breonna Taylor report. All of this is there. And this is why I say the cops didn't do wrong that night. Because this paints a very different picture of who Breonna Taylor was. She was complicit and knowingly involved in a drug ring.
It paints a different picture. Just going over that stuff that we went over, it paints a completely different picture than what the mainstream media wants you to believe.
Exactly.
Just altogether. That's why, again, I hate to beat a horse to death, but research is important. Because if you actually look behind the curtain of mainstream media, you find things that they will not tell you. They just won't tell you it. I want to know if you mentioned that one of the grand jurors asked that everything be made public. What came of that? Why is that not in the mainstream media?
You could argue it is because that was the New York Times that said it, but I see your point.
Yeah, but didn't the grand juror ask for like the? Isn't that what she was asking for, or did I misunderstand that?
No, she was asking for everything to be made public. All 15 hours of audio of the grand jury indictment that was made public. This information I don't think has been mainstream made public, but one thing I like is one of the last pages of this. We remember the name Jamarcus Glover. That's the ex-boyfriend, the one the cops were after, or the one they were watching, whose name was on the warrant. when, as of May 18th, 2020, clear check of Jamarcus Glover shows his address as Breonna Taylor's address. So I wonder why they
Interesting.
went to that address that night.
Yeah, because April, right?
I mean, that's his last known address. Of course you're going to go there. You're watching this shit happen for months. Here's 42 pages about it. You see traffic coming in and out of this house. You see this guy that is named in your warrant listed at that address. Granted, he wasn't there, but they didn't know that.
Right.
They're
But
going off the facts they have.
but you said his ID showed that all the way up to May, right?
This
And
is
the rate had.
as of May, Clear, which is a program they can use to look up people's address and information, showed
Yeah, and the raid happened in April. Is my point.
yes, or March. I think it was March. We saw earlier.
March.
And then an accurate mobile
So-
check of Jamison Glover shows his probable address also as Breonna Taylor's address. Accurate and clear check of Breonna Taylor shows her address as the same address. That's pretty open
And
shut
people
to
are
me.
still wondering. Yeah, and people are wondering why it went down.
You have
when it went
hours-
down. Well, they were looking for.
You have hours of phone conversations from a jail to Breonna Taylor, where this suspected drug dealer, who they've been investigating for months, is asking for bail money, talking about this situation, asking about packages. His address
Using
matches
words.
her address when they look it up. They knocked on the door. They announced we have a warrant. They were shot at. What the fuck do you expect?
Well, I think they were expecting the neighborhood watch group to bring them cookies and ice cream. I don't know.
That's almost what it looks like. Welcome us with open arms. We're not doing anything
Yeah.
wrong here.
You have no reason to believe any of that.
Yeah, I know I said that on the phone and all, but I didn't mean it. We were talking about something else. We're talking about Christmas in February.
Right.
No, packages. I meant Christmas presents. I meant is the Easter Bunny bringing eggs this year?
Right.
No. It's like, I'm sorry, this was not an unlawful shoot. Now the things that happened.
No, I don't think it
the
was.
things that happened
No.
after the fact, with Hankerson, Detective Hankerson, he broke a lot of procedures, lied about some things, did a bunch of shit he wasn't supposed to do, like he was trying to hide something. But that doesn't change any of this. Yeah, he should be investigated for that. But that still doesn't change this. This is what these people are rioting over.
Well, what they're rioting over is the mainstream media is telling them. They're not educating themselves. They're not asking why. You've obviously put a lot of research into this.
Well, that's because over the past...
And like I said when we first started this conversation, I'm just based off what
a big part of that's because
I'm
over
just
the
basing it off
past
what the
year...
mainstream media said.
It's like over the past year, they've put the idea in people's heads. Blue man bad. Blue man always bad. Blue man police brutality always. So people just latch onto it and run with it. They don't even bother to look this shit up.
Yeah. No, and like I said, it cost $12 million of taxpayer money for them to be able to use her as a political pawn.
Yep, she just became another martyr and an excuse for burning down cities.
That's my takeaway from this conversation.
She was involved
It's
in a
obvious
drug
that-
ring that was potentially being run out of her apartment and is now a martyr that's led to rioting and burning down cities. Jacob Blake was a rapist with a warrant for his arrest who resisted arrest, pulled a knife on the cops, fought the cops, tried to get into a car that was not his with someone else's children in it with a knife, and got shot for it, and the NFL is emblazoning his name over their helmets, the New Orleans Saints. Because people don't research shit.
You want the truth? You can't handle the truth.
I think a lot of them can. Because when you present them with this, they the reaction you get is straight anger. They go straight to calling you
Well,
a racist, you're a white supremacist, you're a
the first
bootlicker,
reaction you
whatever.
get, the first reaction you get is something along the lines of, "Well, his past doesn't matter." Okay, let's take the past out of the equation. And that's exactly what this case does. It takes the past out of the situation. She didn't have a past. What you have is you have a present. You have a 6-month long investigation, code words being used over a prison phone, an ex-boyfriend that's being watched for drugs, an ex-boyfriend that's still using your address, so when they look them up, they're going to come to your house, a current boyfriend that decides he should shoot at the cops and then run and hide because they shot his girlfriend. And you have all these things that add up that the mainstream media will not cover. And yeah, you kind of said it's mainstream media because it's the New York Times. But let's be honest. How many people read the New York Times? Honestly,
Yeah.
most people that read the New York Times are like stockbrokers and people like that. You know, you don't. CNN's not going to cover what the New York Times said unless it's something bad about Trump.
Oh, I'm sure they're. You know, the way CNN works, if they could find a way, they would blame Trump for this.
Oh, they tried that early on in his presidency when Trump made the statement of you don't have to put him in the car so easy. Oh, he's calling for more police brutality. You know, there was a point in time in his campaign where he was like, you don't have to put your hand on top of their head and make sure that they don't bump their head on the way in. You don't have to be so gentle. The left went after him when he said that.
Well, like I said earlier, I started following a lot of YouTubers and social media personalities that are ex-law enforcement, mainly because of all this shit happening in 2020. Most of these guys I didn't watch or follow before 2020. Donut Operator, I've been watching for about a little over a year, but he's very entertaining and I find him informative. A lot of these other guys I discovered because of stuff like George Floyd and Jacob Blake and Breonna Taylor. And I think it was Officer Parker, I believe it was. He said basically, you know, if you're going to have an opinion on this stuff, why not go on a 1 day ride along with your local police? There's a lot of police departments where if you call them up, say something like, hey, I'm thinking of becoming a police officer, I want to learn more about the police, they'll let you ride along with them for a day and see what they really deal with. So you can actually have that perspective.
Right.
And how many people are going to actually do that? But they should. Like, I remember when I was in school, we had the Adopt a Cop program where each classroom, you know, we had a local police officer who would come in, talk to us every month about whatever, drugs, you know, and they called it Adopt a Cop. And that it was good. It built, you know, a relationship with us in like 4th, 5th grade with the local police. We, okay, these are good people. They're teaching us good things. They're here to protect us, you know. Nowadays it's, ooh, don't talk to the police. They're the devil. They'll shoot you because they're racist. They're evil. They're white supremacists. They're fascists. It's like, no.
Well, and that kind of mentality is going to put police officers on edge when they're interacting with anybody, because you don't know. Like, okay, think about it from a cop standpoint, right? You have this great mentality of fuck the police right now, and everybody's against them. Now you walk into a situation, and you don't know if this person is pro cop or anti cop. So they're walking on eggshells from the get go because they don't want to be reported to internal affairs or be the next bad cop on the news for making a mistake or whatever. And so if I had to approach somebody that I thought might hate me, the conversation's not going to go the same as if I thought there was a chance you might like me.
True.
Does that make
No, I
sense?
agree with that. 'Cause that's the same way in your everyday life. If you think someone hates
I,
you, don't walk, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? It's like, sup? And you keep walking. It's No, that makes sense in any situation. I don't know.
right. That's just
Cindy
human
mentioned in
nature.
the chat regarding no-knock warrants. Maybe it should be based on the crime, like looking for a rapist or murderer. Use no-knock. Um, yeah. If I'm looking for a rapist or murderer, I would say go no-knock. Do no-knock on that. Fuck yeah. Definitely a murderer because he might have a weapon.
Yeah.
But
Somebody that robbed a store or
I
something,
mean,
you already know they have
if you're
guns.
dealing with a
If
stash
you if
house, you have to figure those are lifetime convictions if you arrest someone in a stash house. So if you knock and say, "Hey, we're the police. We have a warrant." Blah blah blah. They're gonna be in there flushing everything they can down that fucking toilet.
yeah,
So I see why they got the no knock originally, but up until this week even, I didn't know it had been officially changed to a knock and announce. I know they knocked and announced, but I didn't know it was officially changed because there's no news network on earth reporting on that. They're not telling you that shit. They want you to
they're
hate
not
the
even telling
police
you they
right now.
not.
They're making the
But
police be the bad guys,
yeah, yeah,
which sometimes they are. Yeah. No, like we said earlier, every group has their bad apples. Gavin McInnes said fucked up anti Semitic shit, but he doesn't represent the entirety of the beliefs of the Proud Boys. The this, you know, Mr. Joe Blow cop that goes out there saying, I'm going to shoot this person because I don't like black people, they don't represent the entirety of law enforcement. Like,
no, and we should be hard on the cops that fuck up.
but they,
Like I don't think it's really fair that okay, this cop got reprimanded, he got fired, right? The cop in this particular situation got fired. Okay, fine. Chances are that cop can go to another jurisdiction and get his job back. That's okay if you're found guilty of murdering an innocent person or whatever while you're on duty or you know whatever. Okay, like you said, this guy got fired because he went in there and he started potentially fucking with the crime scene, essentially because there were shots fired. They got to have an internal investigation, like you said. You have a cop that walks in there and starts fucking with shit. That's a bad cop. Just get rid of him. Just cut him off the fucking tree.
that's basically what they
You
did.
know?
They fired him.
Yeah, but when you fire somebody like that, they shouldn't be able to go to another county and get their job back. I
I
would
can
agree
agree
with
with
that.
that.
Um, and that's how you cut out the bad apples. You don't blame the whole orchard for the bad apples. You get rid of them. You pick them up off the ground. You separate them from the bunch, and after you separate them, your harvest will be good, so to say. You know what I
Yeah, that
mean?
makes a lot more sense than let's torch the entire crop because of a few bad apples, which is what
Right.
the left is pushing with defund the police.
Yeah, they want to burn the whole damn orchard down. No, cut them off the branch and get them out of the way.
Well, real quick,
The, the,
I just want to take a second and give a shout out to our sponsor here. Today's broadcast is brought to you exclusively at this point by Savage Image Printing. And Savage Image Printing, why is this not playing? Well,
I don't know, but we need
we
we should get some T-shirts made up.
yeah we had a nice little video, and for some reason it's not playing right now. But anyway, Uh,
Check them out.
check them out. I don't know what the hell
And
happened there.
having technical difficulties.
Yeah, we are. Because I just lost the entire, what the hell? What's going on here? I completely lost the entire, everything. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Savage image printing. This anyway, veteran-owned business bringing you custom printing and embroidery with no hidden fees. Veterans, military, law enforcement, and first responders get 10% off screen printing. You can check them out at savageimageprinting.com. And please do. They also contribute all the designs and graphics for our channel. And if you like their work, check them out, savageimageprinting.com. They even did this lovely graphic you see right here. No, I think that about sums it up. Especially since somehow the source for the screen share that I was putting on the stream decided to delete itself from the sources. I have no idea how the hell that happened, but yeah. So we're still experimenting here with the technical difficulties and wonderful things, but we're getting there little by little, using a different software than I'm used to. I've used it before for single streams like wrestling reviews where I'm just pulling up one window, one video, but using multiple sources, it's difficult. We're getting better. Thank you for those of you who stuck with us through this entire thing. And if you learned something, even better. That's what we're here for. Smash the like, smash the subscribe, share the shit out of us because we ain't going anywhere. We're going to keep this shit going. Absolutely. We will definitely hit on anything you guys recommend. Drop it in the comments. You want us to talk about it, we will touch on it. And I don't know. I think whenever that deleted, I might have actually lost your audio. So we're going to call it a night right now so I can figure this shit out for next time. On behalf of James, who I think you guys can't hear right now, this is Brian saying thanks for watching. Yeah, if you can, have a good night. If you can't, well, do the best you can. And we'll see you next time. This Saturday, we're covering Henry versus the U.S. I don't know. There may be something during the week. Oh, you have a wedding to go to? Okay, we will not be doing that this Saturday. We'll do that Sunday. We'll do that next Sunday, Henry versus the U.S., and maybe I'll do news on Saturday next week. But either way, thank you for joining us,